Hello, beautiful alchemist. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and today we are here for our second hour with Holly Hawkins of hollyhawkins.love. Now, on our first hour with Holly, she shared with us a lot about her journey. She shared with us about her spending her life trying to feel comfortable, which was fascinating, but she shared a lot about channeling. And now we are going to move into something that she is very well known for, which is working in the Akashic Records. So she talks a lot about how in this realm, we can learn a lot about who we are right now. She talks about the Akashic realm being a frequency of love. And she also shares, for a lot of you may find very interesting, about how we can go in the Akashic Records to learn more about our business. So this conversation is so full, just as the last one was, but there's a lot that we talk about that gives a lot of insight into working with the Akashic Records. So I know that you will enjoy this. And if you want to learn more about Holly and her work, go to hollyhawkins.love or follow her on Instagram at holly.hawkins.love. And I will see you on the other side. Day two, back with the beautiful Holly Hawkins of hollyhawkins.love. Oh, now I feel like this is I don't know what if I think of you, Akashic Records just automatically comes to mind. And perhaps in part because you teach it, but it was also again my introduction to you. And you know, it back when I met you, it wasn't as spoken about as it is now.
No, no, it wasn't.
No.
And it
And
wasn't even that long ago.
no, it wasn't that long ago, but there weren't that many people talking about it. That weren't that many people who were aware of it. And definitely there weren't as many uh, different ways of accessing the Akashic
Mm.
records that people were teaching back then. So we learned a lot about your relationship to channeling. Now, in terms of Akashic records, was this something that just came into your awareness unexpectedly? How did you come into relationship with this?
I heard about the Akashic Records in when I was involved in the first healing organization that I got involved with, and I was traveling to different places, um, helping teach the seminars. And there was one woman in particular in the teaching group who I was close with, and she had studied the Akashic Records, and she would talk about it every now and then. And I was always fascinated by it. I thought, well, that sounds cool, but it didn't call me. It
Yeah.
didn't draw me in. It didn't make me curious to say, oh my gosh, can we do that together? I don't know why. It just didn't call me, although I thought it was fascinating what she said. And then fast forward X number of years, I'm not sure how many, another woman who was a friend from that same healing organization said, oh, Holly, I'm taking this training and I actually am going to become a teacher in it. And I just lit up and I just said, as soon as you're done with your training, I want your first class to be at Akasha Healing Studio.
Yeah.
And um, it wasn't the first class, it was her second one. She taught her first one in our hometown.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of, it was like suddenly I got lit up by it. And I'm not sure, I think more than anything else, it was timing. The timing was right for me, but the seeds had already been planted.
Right. So
Yes.
before we go too deep into the Akashic records, what they are and how you work with them and all of these things, I'm just curious your perspective around how you opened up to them differently. So, like, if you can explain, I think you were introduced to them in one way and you worked with them in a very particular way for some time, but then it's almost like you went deeper into your personal relationship with
Mhm.
this realm of consciousness and
Mhm.
things started to open up even wider. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Um, Well, it's kind of like the journey of everything, I guess, to a degree. And it's just that I didn't, sometimes we learn things and then we just leave them off because we've gotten as much as we need to from
Yeah.
them. But for me, it just kept opening and going deeper. So I did learn initially a different method than I use now for the Akashic Records. It was exquisite. I mean, I ended up loving it from the very first class.
Yeah.
And literally the Monday after that first class ended, I felt like I was ready to go and no holds barred. And I was very excited about it. Um, and very quickly decided to learn to teach it also because I'm a teacher.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And so in short order, I became an advanced teacher and then an elite teacher of that particular method. And it was great. I loved it. And now here's the thing I love to share with people because this is counterintuitive for many people. When I first learned to read the Akashic Records, I was better and more confident in reading other people's records than myself.
Mm.
And people think, but I can't do that. I've got to be really good for myself and confident. I need to know all the things. And if I'm not a master of it for myself, I can't possibly do it with anyone else. And that was not my experience at all. And my experience was I felt very confident working with other people from the get-go, not confident with myself at all. Of course, I did it, but I wasn't confident with it. It took me a year and a half or 2 years to get confident with myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And so did it come through differently for you? Like if you were going into the records for yourself, was it a different experience or a different way of translating the transmissions than you working with other people?
For myself than other people, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a really basic way that it was different. For me, doing sessions with other people, and this is whether phone or video, there was more Skype then and not
Yes.
all Zoom stuff, or in person, I'm talking. It's a verbal conversation and a verbal exchange.
Right.
When I do it for myself, I I write. This
Yes.
is my current Akashic Records journal, and I don't even know how many I have. So it came through that way. I tend to write when I'm in my records. Not everyone does, not everyone has to, but that's it. So that's how it came through differently for me.
Now, see, I feel like you just gave me my aha moment from what I asked you in the first hour, because that's exactly what it is for me. So when I learned the Akashic Records at your healing studio, I started going in every day as it was part of required for the class, but I think I went past the 30 days. Like I just
You
kept
did.
going
Yeah.
and I would write. And at first, I remember I would write maybe a paragraph, and it got to the point where it was pages of information to where my hand would start hurting. And it was so interesting to me. And the reason I knew the information wasn't coming from me is because it was language I wouldn't use
Yeah.
and spoken in a way that I wouldn't speak. And it was just wild. I mean, it just so interesting to me, going back and reading after because I couldn't think about it while I was writing. But then what started happening is then information would start coming in like these just downloads, just so rapid. And I bought whiteboards, and then remember I would write
Yeah.
whiteboard all over the place and all this. But it wasn't until again the classes, and it was that verbal response. So you just answered that for me. That's what it is. If I'm in a class and someone asks something, it's like something just opens up and then here comes information. So thank you for answering that for me. I think
But
I
also,
just
you're
figured it
allowing
out.
yourself to be in that mode in that
Yes.
situation. You could allow yourself to be in that mode in any given moment of your
Yeah.
life, but it isn't always convenient.
Yeah, no. And it is something nice where you can kind of hang back while someone else asks a question rather than I'm trying to ask and then, you know,
Right.
do this dance. Yeah. But so you had the particular way. So I learned the way that you did it initially. And I want to ask you about this too, because a lot of people wonder, what do you go on the records for? Did that also change for you over time? How did you initially start working in that realm, and what did it you start? asking or wanting to know in that field?
Oh, that's such a big question. I think initially it was more like the way I was taught and working, at that level. And it was there was a lot of past life focus
Hmm.
and um, a lot of past life focus, actually, initially, I would say. Now, past lives are one small part of the Akashic Records, but there's so much more. As time went on, I did some really deep dives, as you did, in the Akashic Records. Um, I really dove in for like a year and a half to 2 years. Now, this does not sound sexy at all. I'm just going to say that. I'm going to let everyone know ahead of time. I did a lot of work. It's so powerful working to what I would call healing self-abandonment. It's a big shadow that we all carry. In fact, I think from the work I did, it's really core to our healing journey. And I really went for that for a while. And that just really, I mean, again, it's not that it was hard. I was just really consistent at it because I just thought, if healing is self-abandonment is one of these core wounds, I'm just going to go straight forward because we all have that, idea that the healing journey is going through the layers of the onion. We all want to get to that center place, right? So I really did a deep dive in that. That really transformed who I was and my relationship to the Akashic Record because I was kind of like a bulldog with it for a while. And because I wanted to change some patterns in my life, because the Akashic Records is really more about energetically changing the pattern of who you are than receiving information like, oh, you were Cleopatra or you were whatever it might
Yeah.
be. That it's not data driven, it's more energetic transformation. I was really clear on that I want to energetically release things that aren't serving, energetically embody what I need for my forward movement. So that's how it changed, I think, a lot.
Yeah, I actually remember when that came up for you. I remember, I think you even had a class around it. And
I'm going to teach it this year
are
again.
you? Well,
I
it's
haven't taught it since 2019.
Oh, wow. Well, the reason it stands out is because I remember even that phrase, even just the recognition of you're like, oh my gosh, I abandoned myself in all these ways, ba 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 ba. And I was like, whoa. But it was so powerful because it was one of those things like, yeah, I guess when you think about it, we've all abandoned ourselves in so many ways, but wouldn't consciously have a recognition of it, not have
No,
that language for it, probably didn't look at it
no,
that way. And
right.
so yeah, I remember when that first came through for you, it was just like a big wow. It was
Yeah, and because we spend a lot of time, energy, money, effort, like all of it
Mhm.
in healing, which we can talk about in our third section.
Yeah, yeah.
But the idea of it is, another way to, well, let me back up a minute. What another way to, that's more popular now to refer to self-abandonment,
Mhm.
it's the response to our trauma.
Mm,
And we've all had trauma. Listen, you don't get to come to planet Earth without trauma. Sorry. It happens.
yeah.
But trauma fits nicely into that beautiful saying of, that the crack is where the light gets in.
Yes,
So our
yes.
trauma is where we have this opportunity to discover more of who we are and that truth of who we are. And so yes, we've had traumas and we all have had traumas to differing degrees. And it's not so much what happened, but how we felt about it. And so that's where the self-abandonment comes in. And when we start to heal that, then we're not as impacted. The trauma, we can never take away what happened. It happened, like the stuff that happened in my life and the stuff that would have happened in yours or anyone else's. We don't get to go in with a pink pearl eraser and say it never happened.
Right.
But it becomes less charged, less impactful. We can see our light and see the beauty of who we are, even though those things happen. And that's the core of that healing self-abandonment work. It's what happened as a result of trauma and how do we heal that? Because we really can. And we do it here, not by doing anything with anyone else or forgiving them or whatever else. We do it right here, and then it energetically falls into a different relationship with ourselves.
You know, hearing you say that, it brings to mind, I think a lot of people may not be aware of how self-reflective and introspective work in the Akashic Records can be. And a lot of times, not only do people associate with the past lives, but in general, any kind of reading, a lot of people want to know about the other person. Like, what
Yeah.
is Bob doing? And, is this person faithful to me? Or what's that person's problem? This kind of thing. Do you find that there's a lot of resistance, or is there more of a softening around that now? Are you noticing where people are maybe pointing the finger less and more willing to see what role or position am I playing in these different aspects of my life?
Yeah, I've seen in terms of people who come for readings over the years, there is a big transformation in the people who are coming and what they're working on. I think a lot of the people who enjoy the Akashic Records, whether they're coming for a one-to-one session or whether they want to learn and do it for themselves, they're in a place where they're really saying, like, I'm going to take full responsibility for who I am and how I'm showing up
Yeah.
and my experience of life, and not in a self-abusive way, like, oh, I have to take responsibility for this. But it's like, no, it's like people are really getting, or at least the people I work with are really understanding that, like, not only can I take responsibility for my experience, that means I also get to take responsibility for creating a new experience.
Yeah.
And so they're really open to that and want to have a tool to support them in that.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing of why I love so much of this work. But one of the things I went in, and I'm curious because you teach the Akashic Records, do you find that people, again, have different points of focus or why they seem to have a resonance with this realm? So, for example, when I first learned the Akashic Records, yes, I mean, I was just at the start of this work. So there was like a blip on the screen. It was a very short window of me asking questions about myself in terms of where these patterns and habits or blocks or these kinds of things. And it quickly transitioned into I was curious just about our function. I was curious about energy work. I was curious about, I guess, just universal intelligence, whatever falls under that umbrella. And from the original way of working with the records, it was kind of like you don't go in for these kinds of things. But, I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm just curious to see what happens. But that was always became my thing with the records. What can I learn in there? That
Mhm.
didn't necessarily have to do with me as a person. So could you talk about the various things, like why someone might want to go into this realm and how you even see it? And I mean that from the lens of, like a lot of people are like, oh, so it's a library, or is it what is
Yeah.
it to you?
Great, great questions. I'll just answer the library part of
Oh
it
yeah.
first and then move into the other one. I don't see a library when I go in there. No, so first of all, I mean, we could talk about our clairs, but and so, the clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, etc. The thing is with that is people have very different experiences when they're actually in their Akashic records.
Yeah.
Now, I'm somebody who, as much as I channel and you might even hear me say, well, what I saw was, I don't actually see anything. I just have this deep inner knowingness, and that's just how I operate in the world. And it's how I operate in my everyday life. Like, I just know this is the next step or this is the next thing. But I personally, if I say I'm seeing something, I'm actually not seeing anything.
Yeah.
I just have this inner knowingness. There are people who go in the records and they see all kinds of things. They see more abstract colors and energetic movement. They might actually see a scene, they might see a library. And I've had a lot of students say they feel like they walked into a library-esque room and there might be volumes of things, and a book might magically open on a podium type thing, or they're walking down and they know this is their book and they open it up. I've never had that experience. Um, so I feel like it's a realm that meets us where we are,
Yeah.
because, if we go back to the basics of what the Akashic records are, we have to look at what's the Akash.
Hmm.
And it's this highly refined field of energy. It's our primordial energy that we're immersed in all the time. It's in and through everything.
Yeah.
So just like, our field of multidimensionality, or what we were talking about channeling, I think it's going to show up for us in the way that we can relate to and connect with it. And I teach this in my class all the time. If you ask me what I quote unquote see when I go in the records, and I can't even tell you how many thousands, tens of thousands or more between my own work and working with clients I've been in the
Yeah.
records. I see gray. I don't see anything.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't mean I don't take it personally, because I feel,
Yes.
and I have this deep knowingness. Like if a past life comes up, they give it to me like in a packet of information, not in a linear way, like we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
So it meets us where we're at, I feel, and brings to us something that can be understandable and digestible for ourselves. But and I do feel that people, again, who come for readings and especially to the classes now, they understand a lot more. I'm going to say they're a lot more energetically, metaphysically, um, sophisticated, if you will. So it means we can go a whole lot deeper.
Yeah.
And there's just inherently, and I just view it as like we're waking up as a consciousness, as a collective. And so people are coming with a different capacity, and the Akash can expand, it expands to this infinite level, so we can meet it with more, and we can get more from it. Now with all that, I forgot your first question. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. The way that people go in the reasoning that we might
Oh,
go, yeah, go into the records.
um, on a personal level, I mean, so first of all, we were talking really focused on like human beings in the Akashic records, which
Mm.
is a really primary way to do it. But the truth is your home has an Akashic record. If you're a business owner, you have created something.
Yeah.
And so your business actually has an Akashic record. Your pets have an Akashic record. The planet has an Akashic record, national monuments do. Your favorite tree in your backyard has an Akashic record. Your favorite crystal has an Akashic record. So there's a lot of ways to work in the Akashic records. So in that general sense, in terms of personally human, um, I would say a lot of people come in, and especially more and more these days, wanting to understand more of why am I here?
Mm.
And it falls under the soul's purpose
Yeah.
heading, if you will. And what I have learned from all my work in the records, we often collapse soul's purpose into the work we're doing. Like, I have to have a new job, or I need to become an accountant, or I need to do this or that. And my experience from working in the records for so long is that very often our soul purpose is expressed and can be manifest. It doesn't matter what we're doing. It's not very often, occasionally, but not that often connected with what we're doing in the world.
Yeah.
Because often soul's purpose ends up being these soul level qualities. Like I'm coming in this lifetime to be more self-confident,
Yeah.
or learn to embody a greater amount of self-love and appreciation, or a greater sense of worthiness, or these high soul level qualities that we're that through our experiences in this lifetime, we have an intention before we came in to cultivate that. But it doesn't matter if we're a public school teacher or if we're working at the local grocery store or we're doing whatever, our soul's purposes can be realized in any environment.
I'm so glad you said that because I think a lot of people put a lot of stress and pressure on them of figuring that out. And in the way that you describe it, I think we can kind of take a sigh of relief of we're living through the expression of our purpose no matter what. And maybe it just is a matter of do we recognize what life is revealing to us about our purpose. There's so many things I want to ask you from what you just said, but one of the things is the resonance to the field, because that's another thing. Some people may learn the Akashic Records and in the beginning, perhaps like how I only got a paragraph and then that changed entirely. And it felt like I was acclimating to that realm. I was acclimating to the frequency of access, so to speak. And then once with the regularity of going in, then I was able to be more perceptive and tuned into the information. So
Absolutely.
I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about that and how the diligence and practice or going in frequently really helps with how you may be in communication with that realm.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it absolutely perfectly. We're acclimating in there,
Yeah.
and it's a dimensional realm that is all around us, but we weren't trained to access.
Right.
And so in our early stages, we're just learning how to be in the space. We're actually learning to trust the Akash.
Hmm.
We're also when we're in our Akashic records, we have a team of guides and we're learning how to have a relationship with them. They're guiding us every single day, whether we are believing in the Akashic records or not. It doesn't matter. Your soul guidance team is always guiding you. What's new is like, oh, I'm going to come in here and interact with you guides, but they've always still been there. So we have to learn that it's like developing a relationship. Generally, when we meet somebody, whether we instantly think we love them or not, the reality is it takes time to develop a relationship and learn how to communicate and all of that. And we're doing that with our guidance team in there.
Yeah.
So there is this what I would call more than practice, because a lot of people hate the word practice and it can have a really constricting energy to it. We want to just be consistent in getting into that space, and not just getting into that space, but getting comfortable.
Yeah.
Now, I can't talk about that without bringing in what is this energy of the Akasha? Because it matters. It makes a difference.
Yes.
The energy, the foundational energy, we can say, oh, it's Akash, primordial substance, all that sounds cool, but it's the vibration of love. It's the vibration now, and that even sounds a little out of reach because love is kind of a squirrely little energy for us, right? We're all desiring it, but it's really pretty elusive to most of us. But how does love express, or how is it received is, it's through kindness,
Yeah.
caring, generosity, patience, right? There's a gentleness. And when we are in the presence of love, we may not be able to describe it, but we know it.
Yeah.
Same thing with the energy of grace, these divine qualities. We can't really have a good description of them, but we sure know it when we're there. And so when we move into the Akash, that is the field we're in. We are in a field of love. Now, what happens in that field of kindness, generosity, and compassion? Our judgment falls away. And when our judgment falls away, we expand, because judgment is a very constricting energy. Okay. And just think about how judgmental we all are on ourselves. Doesn't create change, it keeps people stuck. So judgment falls away and wounds soften while we're in that space. And so then our natural energies get to, in a sense, come forward and express, because our natural energy is an exact match to the Akash.
Wow.
Our natural inherent energy is everything that I just said about what the Akasha is. So when we're in that space, no matter what we're doing, even if we just sit quietly for a minute, which is something I love to do, we're immersed in our soul frequency and the Akash, and our soul frequency and the Akash is the same love, kindness, compassion. Again, nobody cares in that space of the Akash how much money you make, that you failed out of school, that you haven't found the right lover for you yet, you feel uncomfortable in life, whatever it is, you're okay. You're seen and known as you are. And it's not an academic experience. It's this vibrational experience that you're immersed in. So, and it's through that filter that we then can ask some questions and we can find some understanding. Now, I know people love to talk about past lives, and you talk about how do we approach it. The way I teach people to approach it is it's all about you, because when I open my Akashic Records, I'm in my Akashic Records. I can't ask about my neighbor down the street who I really don't like and what's wrong with them, right? It doesn't matter because it's all about me in my Akashic Records. So the idea is, what is it that I would like to transform or experience that maybe when I'm in this more open field, I can more easily access that information, know and feel that it's in alignment with me. And then I can bring that out of my records, if you will, into my life, apply it, and see what transforms with that. That's probably way more than you wanted. But people do come in asking, I ask people to focus on what are your top questions about who you are right now, period. Now, and if there's a past life connection, if there's an ancestral impact, it will come forward if it needs to. We don't need to decide, I have to go look at my past lives. Because sometimes when we go in the records, the guidance that comes through is all about stuff that's happening in this life right now, or how to move forward from where you are right now. It doesn't always have to go back to past lives or ancestral issues. It might if it's necessary.
Yeah. I listen, I'm blown away. I'm like, that is the most incredible description I've heard of the Akashic Records, I think ever. I think that gives a lot of clarity, but I think it'll also widen the scope for people who are already familiar with it as well. And two things that really struck me, that stood out with what you said, I mean, a lot did. But when you're talking about it being the vibration of love, I love you pointing this out because it's honest in there. It's honest. It's not necessarily what you want to hear, but it'll be what will support you or maybe what it is that's needed for you to know at that time. But you know it's not coming, it's not malicious. And
Never.
I just say that to say because a lot of times people come to just readings in general only wanting to hear what they want to hear, not necessarily wanting to hear what's true. And so that's a beautiful way of even thinking of in this loving intelligence, you're going to get what's true, but it doesn't have to be what you want to hear and it can still be love anyway.
And I think when you hear what's true, there's a deep knowingness
Yeah.
that, you know, that this is right.
Yeah.
It may be a surprise.
Hmm.
I don't get this anymore, and this is part of the change I've seen, but early on, so the Akashic Records isn't psychically predictive also. Like I say to people, if you want that, please just go find a psychic and make sure they're good. If you want to talk to your dead loved ones, find a good psychic medium,
Right.
evidential medium, and find somebody who's good. But, the Akashic Records is about our personal unfolding,
Yeah.
not just healing. And I know we're going to talk about in the third section, but like, it's not just only about healing. It's about being in a space that allows us to unfold into our potential.
Yeah.
And how, bit by bit, moment by moment, what we're able to do right now, today, tomorrow, the next day, and be able to feel that our dreams and desires actually mean something and that they are possible, even if they don't look like what we expect. And that goes back to what I started to say is I used to get questions that were more about this. Most of my clients are women,
Mm-hmm.
um, because that's what happens in this realm right now. But so there I would have a number of people ask like, but I really love this person. I think they're my soulmate. I think they're my twin flame. Why aren't they asking me to marry them? So number one, that's very predictive, and that's the Akashic Records isn't a predictive field.
Right.
Again, find the right tool, meaning find the right person who does that and get that answer. But aside from that, a lot of those questions have something underneath them where we're super attached and we've decided that if I'm close to them, if they're a soulmate, if they're a twin flame, it must look like this. So, and this goes back to this affirmative piece of it. And the Akashic Records, at least the way I work in the records, it doesn't usually say, "Oh, are you crazy?" Like, no, of course not. That's not going to work. Again, it's always kind, gentle, positive, looking for the positive, looking for the light, not
Yeah.
trying to, we get hurt enough in life by ourselves and other people. This is a purity that's outside of those human dynamics. So part of it in the records with that kind of question is really getting underneath what is it that you're looking for? And what if it's not them, but there's somebody else out there, and working with it from that point of view. And because the truth is, I don't know if you're going to marry them or not. That information doesn't necessarily come through for me that way, but we can work with your energy of like, what is it, that vibrational resonance that will bring to you and allow you to be in right alignment with that beautiful relationship with you that you're seeking without it being so externally focused.
Right. Yes. And I love anything really that kind of brings the turns it back in on us, especially because that in of itself is such a gift when we start to recognize it's not like we're being attacked by the universe, we're not being punished by life, but having this totally different vantage point of what do I need to understand about me, my
Right.
energy, my beliefs, my function, my programming. That in of itself just changes everything. And
Yeah.
I have to say, one of the things you brought up too was one of the things I loved to do when I would go on the records every day is just sit.
Mm.
So a lot of people don't know that you can just go in there and you don't necessarily have to ask anything. You can just sit in the frequency of. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it may have benefited you in your own resonance in some way?
Yeah, well, it's a great question because it is a vibrational field.
Hmm.
And yes, we can go in and ask questions, we can receive information, and also energetically get transformed by being in there. And yet, as I already mentioned, it's this beautiful energetics that if somebody said, walk through that door and go sit in that room, it's vibrating with love. It's vibrating with compassion and kindness and understanding. There would be an enormous line around the block to
Right,
get through that door, right?
right.
Because we're all craving that. And so here's this foundational energy that's part of our universe. We're not like it's all here right now because we're always in our Akashic records. We're creating our Akashic record right now. There's some point in the future where we go back to, oh, in that lifetime you did this thing with Yolanda.
Yeah, yeah.
If it mattered. And so we're always creating our Akash. So this idea that we crave and not just the experience of that, but actually discovering it in ourselves as well. But it is our inherent energy. We've just got layers on top of ourselves through our human experience that we're uncovering and discovering. So, one of my favorite things to do, and I'm going to say this and then I'm going to tell you a funny story about it, is starting my day by opening my records and just sitting in there, opening to what my experience of reminding myself this is a field of love
Yes.
and the burden, if you will, of the stress of life, the judgment that we might hold against ourselves or the world holds against us, the burden, it gets released while we're in there. We're not feeling it, and that again helps us access more. So I like to go in and just be in there, just maybe 5 or 10 minutes, no agenda,
Yeah.
and then I just close my records and get out. Now, what I know about this is the funny part of it. I think it's funny. I know those also happen to end up being my very best days.
Mm.
Ask me if I do it every day.
That part.
That's the funny part. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt because I have had too much experience with this that if I go on my records just for a few minutes, I'm not even intending to have a great day. I'm just going in there and
Yeah.
sitting and being in that vibration because my I'm lining up more with my soul, natural soul energies while I'm in there.
Yeah.
So I'm more embodied in that moment. And then I go about my day just as I normally would. Those are my best days. And I know that. And I don't always remember to do that. Isn't that funny? We're so funny as human beings
Yeah.
that we don't always do what we know is right, but it's okay. I can do it tomorrow. I don't, again, I also like to think that we can start getting this awareness of what the energy of the Akash is,
Yeah.
this kindness, compassion, gentleness, understanding, grace, all of that. That's what we're all striving for. So, how do I bring that into my everyday life? Well, what I can do is not judge myself because today I didn't open my records and get in there and have my best day ever because even though I know it does, I just, that's okay. You didn't do it today. No big deal. You can do
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Well, now I have a request of you, and it's funny. So, a couple of things. One, you remind me of how many people say, "Oh, that meditation felt so good." And it's like, well, do it every day. It's like 5 minutes, you can do it. And we don't. And we know we have the evidence. Like, yeah, it is funny. I don't know why we do this. But you remind me of my little cousin when I was spending a lot of time on the East Coast during the height of the pandemic, and she and I did that book, The Magic. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it has to do with someone who is related to that movie or book, The Secret. They created a book called The Magic, and essentially it's 28 days. And every day you start your morning with writing 10 things that you're thankful for. But then there's
Mm,
also a different point of focus every day throughout the 28 days. But they all include start with 10 things you're grateful for, right?
sounds like a lovely book.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting. So she and I think today is day 19 or 20, whatever, out of the 28. And but it just reminded me, I hope that you will do this again because I remember you did a challenge or you did something one time where it was a daily practice of going into the records. And I don't remember if it was like a challenge for people in the newsletter or if it was a class, but that sometimes I think us humans, we need the invitation. Like, invite me to come do this thing with you, and then I'll do it for the 30 days. And then, yeah, so hopefully you'll do something like this again so people have the
You know what?
experience.
I will. I've done it with the universal sphere.
Hmm.
That's I'll have to resurrect that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the last couple of years I did it with the universal sphere, but I will resurrect that. Thank you for that reminder
Yeah.
because it is fun to be, to be inspired and motivated. I mean, I've signed
Yeah.
up for lots of those kind of things because it just helps us get out of our everyday pattern, right?
Yeah. And it gives us something to look forward to. We look forward to it, and then almost without even realizing that now we potentially are formulating a habit for ourselves, or we really do start to notice it's
The
so
difference.
obvious the difference. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons I kept going past the 30 days after the class. But there's another thing you pointed out, Holly, that I think would be interesting to a lot of people because a lot of people are interested in intuition. And like you said, this isn't necessarily a realm for like psychic prediction and all of these
Right.
different things. However, you do become aware of your, let's say, like maybe most prominent clairs. So a lot of people do wonder, like, am I clairvoyant? Am I clairsentient? What is my clair? And I think working in the records again without directly saying this is what you're going to realize,
Mhm.
you do. You really start to recognize how do I perceive in
Mhm.
a non-physical way.
Right.
And I think that helps us a lot with even the recognition of whether it's our intuition or being in the records or whatever we're doing. Did that help you kind of refine in any way?
Yeah, I've never had a huge, personally speaking,
Mhm.
I've never had a huge desire to define my clairs.
Mhm.
And um, I never, I mean, I sound so irreverent in a way. Like I never studied it, the clairs,
Yeah.
but just that, I mean, I guess that makes sense. I just know
Yeah.
stuff. And so that makes sense, I guess, maybe that I wouldn't study it 'cause, like I had just had an inner knowing around it.
Yeah.
But definitely working in the Akashic Records expands, I consider it like the sophistication or the sensitivity of our awareness
Yes.
so that we can naturally receive more.
Mhm.
And in the process of that, we might discover, oh, I more naturally, and the way I think of the clairs is not so much what we perceive, but how we receive.
Mhm.
And that's a very subtle difference. You could say
Yeah.
it's a letter, perceive and receive. But what I feel around it is that that's what we're doing. If we're seeing it, if we're hearing it, if we're feeling it throughout our body, I mean, it's how that's how we're receiving it.
Yeah.
So you do become more aware and more refined in how you're receiving and also in your everyday life, whether you're in or out of the records, it doesn't matter. It gets enhanced just by your work in the records.
Yeah.
People say, how can I increase my intuition? It's like work in your records.
Oh, 100%. And that's the thing because I don't even think I had heard of clairs at the time when I learned the Akashic Records. I don't know if I was that familiar with that terminology. And in my mind, I think I associated intuition with just like clairvoyance, like, oh, people who are psychic, they see stuff.
Right.
I think that was the depth of my understanding. So to go in the records and actually to be more clairaudient. And also, I would have the sensation of like, feeling energy and body, but definitely more clairaudient. So when in my own records and it's coming through writing, it is literally the way people describe clairaudience. However, again, what happened over time, it started dropping in like, I can only describe it as like telepathy in a way because I'm not literally hearing a voice, but it's just the words are there and I know what they are
Yeah.
type of thing. But it was being in the Akashic records that helped me understand how I interact with information
Hmm.
in that kind of way.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would have had any idea before. I would have kept looking to see,
Right.
literally see. I would have kept thinking, oh, I don't
Right.
get any of this because I'm not seeing visions.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, were you actually physically hearing as if somebody was talking in your ear initially?
Um, I don't I think so. Yes, because as I'm writing it, it's like I can hear a voice, like a kind
Oh, okay.
voice, like in my mind,
That's very unusual.
yeah, it's like a kind of voice. The same, but it feels the same kind of way as if you were talking in your head. Like when you're
Mm,
speaking in your head, that kind like that, but it just
yeah.
was not my voice because it wasn't my words and it wasn't how I spoke. But
Right.
in general, no, it's not a literal hearing of anything. It's just the words are here. I don't know. Describe that.
No, it's well said. And the what I teach when I'm teaching people initially, because we have to get over the hesitation and getting into the trust of like you are receiving something.
Yes.
And it's the majority of the way people receive when they're in the Akashic records. And what I teach is you got to pretend like it's coming from you
Yeah.
and not from the outside. And people are going to get triggered by pretend. The pretend word helps people get past their academic mind that might want to block
Yeah,
that
yeah.
and have it think something else. So we do talk about, because we have that inner knowingness there, but we've got to get through our highly cultivated cognitive process, which, our world really cultivates our cognition and
Yes.
not the rest of it. So that's what we're kind of deconstructing in those early stages of being in the records. And so very, very few people, at least with the people who come to my classes and the people I work with,
Yeah.
very few people initially have any kind of clairaudience, and especially not clairvoyance. And it's more like it's just this, it's just something that feels like it's coming from me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny you say
And it is
because
because it's your soul level truth.
oh, 100%. Oh, you just reminded me of something I wanted to say about you. Um, but that is the thing, imagination. So I always tell people, especially like in intuitive development, imagination goes hand in hand with your intuition because how else will we know to translate whatever's coming through intuitively or how we are perceiving or receiving what is these energetic impressions. Like we're lucky that our imagination can translate and give us symbols and give us some point of reference to help us understand with more clarity what's coming through. But we just said it's a soul level guidance. I just want people to know I often reference you. Sometimes I'll say the name, sometimes I just say my teacher. I reference you all the time.
Really?
I mean,
Okay.
think about how many times I've said this. It's probably like unbelievable, but this person, Holly Hawkins, is who I'm talking about all the times that I say, one of my teachers said, you have to trust that their soul has their back.
Mm,
I don't remember what class we were in. I don't know what you were teaching. I have no idea. You could have just said it on a phone call between me and you. I have no clue. But that's one of the things that you said that has helped me so much in this work. And it just stays right here in my realm of awareness, remembering that each person on this planet, that their soul has their back, including our own.
yeah.
Where did you say that in a class? Was that part of a class or?
I say a lot of things I don't remember. That's the channeling part. But I mean, it sounds like something I would say. And
Yeah.
and part of that comes from this idea of um, it sits in our worthiness, really. It sits in this idea that like we have to suffer and that, things are mysterious and like out of reach mysterious.
Right.
And that as we tap into that truth of who we are, we really get to discover our greatness. And whether, we're trusting our soul guidance team, which is guiding us every single day at that soul level, like it's all good stuff. And yeah, your soul has your back. I mean, for me, it's like, how can it not?
I mean,
It's
listen,
what
that's what you
animates who
said.
we are.
That's what you said. It was a good one. So this last question I have to ask you about this before this hour ends is the guides. So in the Akashic realm, as you mentioned, we have guides that work with us in that
Mhm.
realm, and that even let's say like interact with or like translate or transmit information back and forth for us. They like they're like mediators in a way in
Yeah.
that realm. But do you find that a lot of people open up more to relationship to their guides because of working in the records? Do other guides come into people's awareness that aren't necessarily like their Akashic guides? But what has that been in relationship to that? Have you noticed anything?
I mean, it's not something I've heard people talk about a lot, but the people who I've heard speak about it after working in their records for a while is just their entire awareness gets opened up more to everything, if you will.
Yeah.
And so there is an easier, more trusting time with their spirit guides, meaning the guides that they might work with outside of um, the Akashic records, more willingness to trust their connection to their spirit guides. Because a lot of people, especially when they're newly opening up to their spirit guides, there's so much doubt that can come in, and doubt and unworthiness. I mean, I've had people say that to me so many times, especially in the channeling class, like, do you know who came in to channel through me? And it's like, no, tell me. And it's like, well, it was Metatron, or it was, and for whomever it might be, it was somebody very exalted, if you will. And it's like, how could they possibly come speak through me? But, all of this helps, again, break down that sense of separation
Mhm.
and really embody our worthiness to be great and interact with greatness.
Yeah. I have to ask you this too before we wrap up about it, because you just reminded me of like Reiki in a way. So I've had various Reiki teachers and, learned from various angles this technique. And some people may say, like you've said, they took an Akashic Records class, or maybe they read a book and they didn't have much success with it, but maybe you just didn't learn a way that necessarily resonated with you. So I want to talk about the way that you teach. Is it open to everyone? Like, so for example, there are some people that say they use Reiki symbols to access the Akashic realm. So clearly you would have to work with that to have that ability or train that way, I guess. With the way that you teach, is it open to everyone? And will you be teaching again anytime soon? Do you know?
So that's a great question. So first of all, I'll just back it up just a wee bit. In that is, I think this is part of the polarity of our dimension. Also, is like people want to have something defined as the way or the best, or the penultimate whatever.
Yes.
Um, if the Akashic Records was a sphere, it's not, because it's limitless. But let's just pretend it was. When we're accessing the Akashic Records, the way we access it are like the little doors.
Mhm.
Like, okay, great, cool. You're accessing the Akashic Records with Reiki symbols. Great, that's your door. You're doing it through a meditation. Great, that's your door. You're doing it through the invocation I teach. Great, that's your door. To me, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Open a door. Who cares how it opens? Find what works for you,
Yeah.
find what resonates for you, and that you can feel. The key for me is, when I teach people to open up to their Akashic Records, find what works and is repeatable consistently so you can grow in your confidence. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it doesn't matter, because the door doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What you do once you get through the door, it's all the same. Working now, people may talk about how to work in the Akashic Records differently, but the idea is just get into that dimension. So I don't get into like for better or worse, like it doesn't matter. Find what works for you. Now, when I teach, I specifically teach the invocation that came through me
Mhm.
after 10 years of working in my records. Now, so if people come to my class, that's what I'm teaching. But um, why? Because it works, and it's what, again, came through my work in the Akashic Records. So, but I don't mind what anyone uses. I've had people in my class say, I've done this, that, and the other thing, and nothing worked. And I've come here and now I feel comfortable with this. So is it because this way is good for them? Maybe. Maybe this is the vibrational match. Maybe it's just you've kind of opened things up in the other things you've explored, and now you're maybe really ready to go. Again, to me, I don't get too much into that.
Yeah.
Just, have fun with what works, because if something works, you're going to be consistent and you're going to get a lot out of it. And to me, that's my ultimate goal, more than the personalities of the styles of the way you get in the record. Just get in and do some work. And yes, I will be teaching it. I think I have it tentatively on the calendar in the summer, but like I said, I'm working out a few family things relative to my father's passing. And so I'll be offering that. I usually just offer it once a year, my foundational class. And I also offer after that, it's the second class, if you will, that's specifically designed for people who want to do it as a practice with other people.
Okay. So there's two things. One, I know I have to ask you because people will probably are screaming why I didn't ask you this yet. You mentioned about
They're
our
not screaming at
businesses.
you.
They're like, hey, no. But you mentioned that our business has an Akashic Records. But I have to ask you this first. From your point of view, how I say, are there different realms within the Akash? Like, are there different, I don't know, like, yeah, that I can only think to say different realms within that field. Are there different areas or, you know, different access points? So, not to say different than what you're saying, like, get in. Okay, you're in
Mhm.
there. But once you get in there, are there different realms to
I
visit?
mean, yes. I mean, yes. And I'm thinking about the simplest way to say this. First of all, it is this limitless field.
Mhm.
So wherever we get in and work, which tends to be initially at this human level,
Mhm.
even including business or your home or whatever it is, that's still in this 3D realm. Tons to do here.
Yeah.
But there are going to be people who want to go beyond that. Now, my work in the Akashic Records actually opened up to me in the last 4 years or something. I'd have to go back and look at the date that I'm going to say, minding my own business, working in the records, and this idea of our galactic Akashic Records came in. I went, wait, what?
Ah.
Like I've never heard of that. And so I doubted it at first. And so I asked about it. So the way I work in my records is they kind of feed me information before I'm even asking, which is just the way I've evolved working in my records, just kind of like you were talking about how you evolved working in your records.
Oh,
That's not necessarily for everyone. They give me things before I'm asking for them. And they say, no, it's time to understand this. And what they said is, it's like we've mostly when we talk about Akashic Records, we're talking about Earth-based Akashic Records, which you really never have to go beyond that if you don't want. But we're waking up to this idea that as souls, we've actually had lifetimes in other times, dimensions, planetary realms, consciousness dimensions. And that's part of our soul's history also.
yeah.
And so by working in my Akashic Records and asking, okay, so tell me about this Galactic Akashic Records thing, I've been doing a lot more work in the Galactic Akashic Records. What's
Okay.
fun about it is the Galactic Akashic Records still includes the Earth records. It's just like if you say, here's the planet, this is not a good graphic for this, but I'm just visually, it gives us an idea. Here's Earth, and we say, okay, these are the Akashic records of Earth, and we have plenty to do here. We've got past lives, it's like all this stuff here. But the Akash is this unlimited field. So it also contains information about our galactic lives if we are interested in that, if we're drawn to that, because we're here by choice and we're bringing some of our gifts, talents, and abilities that we've garnered from other time spaces and dimensions. And we are bringing them here also in this time of awakening.
Yeah.
So that's, and yes, there's even more than that. I feel like there's an infinite amount to uncover. And as we grow and expand, we'll be able to access even more.
Very cool. Yeah. I don't know what, well, I'm glad I asked. I was like, I don't know where this came from, but I'm glad I asked. So the businesses. So there are a lot of practitioners that are not just wanting to start a practice, but maybe already have. And I like your work around this. I remember doing a class with you many, many years ago that was specific to going into the records of our businesses. And what highlighted for me in that was recognizing that our business itself has an energy, has an essence, but that also we're in relationship to that.
Mhm.
And and recognizing what our relationship is to our business, but also recognizing what the business wants and needs, so to speak. So could you talk a little bit about that? Like for people who may be struggling with clarifying their business or bumping their head
Mm.
against the wall, how does going into the records support that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, so when we are creating a business, even if we're like I'm a solopreneur in my business, so you could say, well, my business is me. I'm the one who created it.
Mhm.
But the reality, it's actually you birthed something new.
Yeah.
Just like if, for people who have had children, like that child may have come from you or through you. You may have been responsible for that child being on the planet at this time. But we all know very early on, like my 1 year old granddaughter, she's her own little person. Like, so you've birthed something new and different. Now you're intrinsically connected, but you can open up the Akashic records of your business and receive guidance and wisdom from your business. It will always dovetail with yourself. But what it does is like suddenly you have a partner to collaborate with
Mm.
and receive guidance and inspiration and direction from. I can tell you 100% my business wouldn't be where it is today without the Akashic records.
Right.
I go in there into my business's Akashic records all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just an intrinsic tool I use to help guide me. Like I'll just tell a really quick story. I'm sure you've probably heard this. I mean, I could tell lots of stories, but this is an easy one to tell. Many years ago, um, I opened the Akashic records of the business to say, classic thing, like how to bring in more revenue, how to make more money, how to bring in more clients. Classic. It was like at that level too,
Right.
not very specific, very general. And what I received back from my soul guidance team and my business's records was this frustrated me. But this is what I heard. You take too long booking your sessions. Now, I was not happy with that. That was not what I wanted to hear. And I got flustered and frustrated, but I stayed with it. And I talked to the soul guidance team, and it's like, explain it to me. But instantly I understood. I didn't have a booking system then. So if
Uh,
somebody wanted to book with me, they had to email me or call me, maybe text, but texting wasn't quite what it is now
right.
then. And then I'd have to get back to them and we'd have this back and forth, like, how's Tuesday at 9 and what time zone are you in? And, or even what country are you in? And, back and forth. And then it's like, okay, so here's how you pay. And then I'd have to follow up to see if they paid. And, it's like all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it became really apparent that if I'm doing an hour-long session with somebody, there could easily be a total of 2 hours involved in it.
Right.
And then I was taking recordings and I was compressing them and sending them off to them afterwards. And it's like, holy smoke. So like, it's like, everything's really taking twice as much time.
Yeah.
So my husband at the time we were in business together and he did all the tech stuff too. And he was a whiz at it. And I said, guess what I got in the records? And basically that, it's taking too long. So what that did was that information, then he worked to finally get a booking system and a financial integration system into our business that had not been there before. It was all very manual in a sense that way. And it made all the difference. And it was much more satisfying for the clients because they could just go on and book they booked it. They're on the calendar. We didn't have to go back and forth for days.
Right.
And I literally, but I'm a Pisces, and so I'm a little watery here. The first session that booked in that way that I saw the email confirming it, I cried. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. That was amazing. So, and that all came out of me asking a question in the records, getting an unexpected answer, but recognizing it was actually the right thing.
Yeah.
Because I was limiting the number of sessions I could do every week because of this laborious way I was booking sessions. I had no idea.
Yeah. Isn't it wild? I mean, sometimes, and it is so simple so many times, but It's incredible what we hear because I think we are always expecting something to be big and challenging. And, we're going to get a message that says, go do this obstacle course or whatever it may be that we're expecting. And it
Yeah.
can be the simplest thing, but it's all about what kind of shift does it create. Yeah. And so much of the work points to that. So I have to say, like, wow, this is a good one, Holly. Like, I think it definitely does give a more expansive view of the Akashic Records. And again, just like you mentioned in our first episode, you don't have anything scheduled right now, but later throughout the year,
Yeah.
you may have some classes coming
Yeah.
up. And anyone, it doesn't matter if they're familiar with energy work, it doesn't matter what they
Yeah.
have done or not, they can come and take your classes.
Even if
So,
they don't know what their clairs are, even if they feel
yes,
like they're not spiritual enough, everyone has, when you understand that your Akashic record is the record of your soul, you absolutely have the right and the ability to go in there and thrive as a result of being in your Akashic records. Everyone can do it.
that's a beautiful message. Again, I think a lot of what you share, interestingly enough, and you may not even realize it, there's a lot of permission you give that people need a lot in this realm. And it doesn't matter if it's like day one for them or they've been doing this 20 years. A lot of times we just need to hear that certain things are okay or certain things are possible. And perhaps we hadn't heard it before, or perhaps we heard it at a time that we weren't ready to really ingest it. So I really appreciate, just in general, the way that you teach, your approach, just everything about you. But I love you. I'm glad you're like one of my people that I get you at all the layers. So be sure to visit Holly's website, hollyhawkins.love. And you can also follow her on Instagram at holly.hawkins.love. But the links for everything are down in the show description. Thank you so much for sharing with us about the records. And we'll be back with Holly on Friday. Okay, beautiful alchemist. Again, have to thank Holly for having these conversations with us. And if you want to learn more about Holly and her work, be sure to visit hollyhawkins.love. If you want to follow her on Instagram, you can follow her at holly.hawkins.love. And I hope you learned something today about the Akashic realm, or even just some aspect that gave you an aha moment about your healing journey. Now we have one more hour with Holly, which will air on Friday. So be sure to come back on Friday. And we're going to talk about how she has been guided in her path or on her path, and even how she navigates what to offer. And I asked her about this because a lot of practitioners have some confusion around what it is to offer as far as their services and just how to navigate this healing path, this human experience all the way around. So she is going to talk about some ways that we can really clarify a lot of things for ourselves as we are trying to understand the layers of our purpose and understanding layers of our choice. So good. So I hope that you will tune in on Friday. And don't forget, if you want to learn more about me and my work, you can visit theenergeticalchemist.com, sign up for the newsletter, or follow me on Instagram at Reiki Radio. I hope you are having a gorgeous day, and remember to always journey in love.